I saw the sun come up somewhere around Gadsden or Glencoe, Alabama today. But it's good to see you. It's good to be here. It's almost like full circle for me. I was born right here in LaGrange, Georgia, when Dad preached at the Park Avenue Church of Christ. I don't remember LaGrange all that much, other than the fact that I knew where it was located on a map. But I have preached at the Bartlett Road congregation. Is it still there? I don't know if it's still there or not. Okay. And of course, when Travis Connors used to preach at the Park Avenue congregation, I did some teaching and preaching there. And I'm sad that my wife can't be with me, and she's doubly sad of that. She likes to go with me, but this is a school year, and she's in countdown mode. It's May. She's got 18 days left. And there's a little boy in her class named Jordan. I saw a picture of him yesterday. I wanted to find out who he was because I felt like I could write him off on my income tax this year. His name comes up at my house almost all the time. By the way, it's not in a positive way either. It's sort of like, what did Jordan do today? Right? But good to be with you. Let's get into our study here. I understand we got about roughly 35, 40 minutes. I want to ask you a question as we begin a study today. Have you ever felt like quitting? Just giving up? Now let me move to the next step. Have you ever felt like quitting the church? Because there's a difference between quitting and quitting the church. I'll assure you that in my line of work and being a preacher's child, living the Christian life and being some kind of example to the world out here, that's not easy. As a matter of fact, there's more in the world than there are in the church. Always going to be. Few there be that find it, and many there be that go in there at. Jesus said in the Sermon on the Mount, Matthew 7, 13, 14. So we have to understand we're always going to be in the minority. Righteousness will always be the few. And yet, there's a reason why we don't quit. A reason why we don't give up. Now, have you ever known of anybody who was baptized into Christ and 5, 10, 15, 20 years later quits the church? Well, what do you understand that they don't understand? Because there has to be something up here. Because, by the way, people quit in the mind a long time before they ever quit in the feet. And there's some kind of understanding that you have that makes you keep on keeping on. Well, I want to study about a man in the Old Testament, and yet he is referenced in the New Testament. Turn to James chapter 5. James 5. James is a book that is trying to encourage brethren to hold on to their faith. As a matter of fact, the whole second chapter has a great deal to say about faith. And though you may not have a lot of money, that poor man that you read about in the book of James, he was rich in faith. Chapter 2 says. When you come down to chapter 5, and we'll start in verse 10, he says, "Take my brethren, the prophets, who have spoken in the name of the Lord, for an example of suffering affliction." Okay, suffering affliction. 2 Timothy 3 verse 12 says, "Yea, and all that live godly in Christ Jesus shall" what? "Suffer persecution." But the rest of that verse says, "They're an example of suffering affliction and of patience." Patience. Now, there's two different words you'll find in the New Testament for this concept of patience. One is often translated long suffering. And then there's this word, patience. Long suffering is from an original word that means to have a long temper. In other words, you're dealing with some person and they're giving you fits. Like this boy I mentioned my wife's got in first grade right now. He's sort of giving her fits. But she's counting down. I got 18 days of him left. And he moves on to second grade because she's first grade teacher. And what do you do in the church? Particularly, we have kids that go through the Sunday school program and they promote to the next grade level. But when do you retire from the church? When do you, no longer attend the church like you do in high school? You don't come back to high school. You graduate. Coming back to college, you graduated unless you want to bring money with you. Okay? When you graduate from the church, when you check out. It's when you graduate from the church, when you go to heaven. Okay? And you plan on leaving earth from this congregation if you live here any length of time and go to heaven, go to your real home. This is a pilgrimage. Okay? This is a walk of life, a journey to a permanent destination. Well, that's what they understood. We're not down here for a long period of time, and we're going to endure whatever it takes. And that's that meaning of the word patience here. Endurance. In Hebrews 12, verse 2, it says of Jesus, looking unto Jesus, the author and the finisher of our salvation, of our faith, who for the joy that was set before him endured the cross. Endured. Okay? Same concept here. The verse right before it in verse 1 says, let us run with patience the race that is set before us. The word there means endurance. Endurance. I'm not in my 30s right now, but I was at one time. And one day I was sitting at my office desk, and I was starting to lose feeling from both knees down to my feet, just sitting there. And I thought, this isn't good. This is not normal. And so when I stood up and walked around, everything started working back right, and I thought, I got to do something about this. So I talked to a buddy of mine, and he ran 5 and 10 and kilometer races, and in fact he did a few marathons. I don't have any intention of doing a marathon, but I said, I think I'm going to get into running. I said, but let me tell you something about running by yourself. That's boring. As a matter of fact, it can be tough to do that on your own, particularly if it's cold or if it's pouring down rain or whatever the case might be. And I said, and I need a motivation to actually keep me going other than the fact that it's for health reasons. And so he started talking about these races, 5 kilometer, 10 kilometer, 15, 10 miles and whatever. And so I started running in races. You'll build up some endurance if you want to run and if you want to meet some kind of goal. My personal record in a 10-kilometer race is 37 minutes and 52 seconds. And I'm going to tell you right now, you're not walking. Okay, when you're going 10 kilometers for 37 minutes and 52 seconds. That is 6 minutes and 10 seconds a mile for 6.2 miles. Okay, now just map you out a mile out here and run 6 minutes and 10 seconds. And when you get to the end of it, see if you covered a mile. By the way, you got to do that the next mile too. And the next mile too. And the next mile too. Let me tell you something about races. Okay, back to the idea, let us run with patience, with endurance, the race set before us. Learned a lot about that passage right there, running races. Okay? There's 2 parts of a race that are not hard at all. Starting line. Anything hard about the starting line? That's the easy part. And actually the finish line. Finish line's easy. Because when you can see the finish line, let me tell you something. You know what your brain does to the rest of your body? It sort of kicks it into high gear. It's like, I can quit right there. I can stop right there. Now, you want to know the hard part of a race? It's all those steps in between. That's the hard part of a race. Okay? Because it's got ups and it's got downs and it's got dogs on the sides. Okay? It's got cars. Okay? It's got all kind of obstacles. Got all kind of weather. Okay? Got wind. Okay? What's the problem with the Christian life? Is it from the time a person's baptized? Oh no. I've never known anybody come up out of the waters of baptism and tell me they're going to quit in 5 minutes. Nobody's going to do that. Man, they're living a euphoric high. And then you tell them they got terminal cancer and got 2 weeks to live. You know what they start thinking about? They don't start thinking about the Braves, or football. Or you know what they start thinking about? They think about checking out. They start thinking about spiritual things. They get real close to God all of a sudden, don't they? Prayer means something. What about all those days in between? That's your race. Like tomorrow. Who knows what tomorrow's going to bring for you and me? None of us know. 4 years ago, on August the 27th, this is 2011. Y'all maybe not remember much about August the 27th. Not August, April. I get my A months right here. April 27th. 4 years ago, actually, just last month. All these tornadoes, the outbreak of the tornadoes that came through. How many of y'all remember that? Okay, y'all have any tornadoes right in here? Okay, we had an F5 come through. It started in Mississippi. It came through downtown Hackleburg. It just ate Hackleburg up. It came right up through our territory, and it got our church building. Okay, destroyed it. I mean, it didn't wipe it off the face of the earth. Picked the roof of the auditorium up 30 feet in the air and let it go and dropped it and crushed the walls all the way to the ground. Every pew was flat on the ground. This is a Wednesday, 4:30. If it had been 3 hours later, at 7:30 on Wednesday, if we hadn't been in the storm shelter, it killed everybody in that auditorium. Okay? For 20 months, the Bethel Church of Christ didn't have a place to meet called the Bethel Church of Christ building. We went to the Hobb Street Church of Christ, where Brother Bill Irby used to preach. This congregation preaches now. And we worshiped there for 3 months at 2 o'clock in the afternoon on Sundays. And then went to Bible study with them on Wednesdays. And then we rented a place at Athens Bible School in Athens for the rest of the time. I guess it'd be 17 months. Okay? When that F5 tornado came through and took the building, 10% of our congregation didn't come with us. Now you would think you'd know your congregation. And all of a sudden, one day you got a building, in 5 seconds, you got nothing. And 10% of the congregation is not going to go with you over into Athens. So we get the building built, 5% come back, and 5% never come back. What do you think about that? That is discouraging, isn't it? What did we do to run 5% off? We didn't do anything. That just wasn't going to stick around. Okay. What does this congregation mean to you folks? This congregation collapsed and folded? Hey, just move on to the next one. Is that what you do? No skin off my nose. I just need a place of worship. How about that? I'm not real sure that sentiment is not in every congregation of our people. I don't think that's just unique to Bethel. We had a lot of good folks still do. Matter of fact, I guess you'd say 95% of the people said, Lord, take our church building away. We'll still be at Bethel. We'll still do the work. And yet there's 5% that says, we wasn't really all that dedicated to Bethel anyway. Oh, we're not going to quit going to church somewhere. Well, we're not really interested in sticking with Bethel. And that's what happened. We'll let the Lord take care of that in judgment. Okay? But quit. We just quit, you people. Well, I'll quit the church. Okay? Have you ever known of anybody getting disgusted with a member of the church, and next thing you know, they say, I'm just going to quit the church altogether? Here's a person who made me mad. By the way, if you've ever preached, if you're a preacher's kid, by the way, I'm a preacher's kid who preaches, who's got preacher's kids. Okay, so I'm a triple whammy here. Okay, and I've had my pedigree read to me, how low I am. Okay, I actually got some folks over in Australia who think I'm a false teacher. Wrote my elders letters to the effect that I was a false teacher. Y'all didn't know y'all was having a false teacher for a gospel preacher. Okay. By the way, it makes you feel good to be told you're a false teacher. Okay. Had people tell me when I preached on children needing to be disciplined by their parents, according to the book of Proverbs, that I believed in child abuse. By the way, my daddy abused me. He abused me big time. Okay. And as a matter of fact, I guess I abused my kids. Yeah. I think they turned out all right. Man, by the way, they're all three married now, so I'm an empty nester, and thank the Lord for that. I'm glad for it, to be honest with you. Got two grandkids. I got one on the way, by the way, just learned recently through Daniel and his wife. And the whole idea is, do you expect criticism from non-Christians outside the church? Don't you expect that? Come on, it goes with the territory. Okay? Where do we really get discouraged? When it comes inside the church. Okay? You remember that controversy between Abraham and Lot and his herdsmen in Genesis 13? When Abraham walked up to Lot, you know what Abraham said to Lot? Let there be no strife between thee and me, between thy herdsmen and my herdsmen. We be brethren. We be brethren. Now, folks, I'm not kin, as far as I can tell, bloodline or even married line to any of you in this room. But we be brethren. We're brethren. We're going to treat one another that way. I'm not just going to call you brother or sister so-and-so. I'm going to treat you that way. Okay? By the way, whether you treat me that way or not, I'm going to treat you that way. That's what agape does. Okay? Agape love does not seek its own. Okay? Doesn't keep a running account of evil things. It's not envious. Not puffed up. Okay? Bears all things, believes all things. So that's what real love does. I'm here to serve you. Whether you want to help me out or not, I'm here to serve you. Okay? And that's why you don't quit the church. Okay? The prophets understood that. Went through all kinds. By the way, who were persecuting the prophets? Their own people were doing it. Their own people. Okay? Elijah, his own nation wanted these. Jezebel in particular, by the way. I mean, that's a good first lady, isn't it? Jezebel. Okay? Jeremiah, they put him down into a well to let him die in the mire, in the bottom of that old well. Hadn't been for a eunuch to get him out of there, he would have died in the well. Okay? Preaching to his own people. City of Jerusalem. Capital city. Look at the next verse. James 5:11. Behold, we count them happy which endure. That's that word impatience. Endurance. You know, you keep on keeping on. It may take you a little time to get through today, but you get through today, it'll help you tomorrow, and it'll help you the next day, and that'll help you the next day. Well, that's how running is. Let me tell you something. You don't build up physical endurance by sitting around watching television 8 hours a day. I mean, you watch television of all the exercise shows you want to. After 8 hours of watching that, you won't have any more endurance if you don't get them to do something. This body is made to work. It's a machine. It's got muscles and joints. And you lay around and do nothing, it'll go away. You ever heard use it or lose it? That's a fact. By the way, it's true of this up here too. It's true of your mind. It's true of your soul. You exercise your soul. By the way, the Bible talks about spiritual exercise in lots of passages, particularly in Hebrews. Okay. Job. Okay. Look at verse 11. Ye have heard of the patience of Job, have seen the end of the Lord. The Lord is very pitiful and of tender mercy. So that's a lesson that we learn about God in the book of Job, right there from James 5:11. But most of the time when we study the book of Job, who do we study about? We study about Job, right? The man Job. Well, this verse says, it tells you something about God. The book of Job was to teach us something about God. That He is compassionate and merciful. So it says, man, then don't let Him be compassionate and merciful to me. Based on what I read in the first 2 chapters of what He let Satan do to Job. Oh my goodness. Okay? Now why didn't Job quit? Years ago when NASA was formed and we began what we call this space program, particularly to put a man on the moon in 69. By the way, I remember that. In July 69. Y'all got to remember that. Neil Armstrong stepped on the moon. They had an expression for these astronauts that said they were made of the right stuff. The right stuff. What does that mean? You got to be made of the right stuff to get to heaven. You got to be made of the right stuff to go to the moon. Let me tell you something. You got to be made of the right stuff to go to heaven. Because Satan knows every one of our names. He knows us by name. He knows who we are. Listen, Satan don't want the world. He's already got the world. You know who Satan wants? He wants you. Who Satan wants is the church. That's what he wants. Don't think for a minute he hadn't asked for Jimmy Clark by name before the throne of God. Let me have him. Let me put him through the ringer. I'll show you. He don't mean what he preaches. He don't. Let me have him. Let me make him suffer. I have any doubt. The Bible says in the book of Revelation, he accuses the brethren night and day before God. He accuses you. He's called your name before God. Let me have it. Let me have her. I'll show you every week. I'll show you they didn't mean anything when they were baptized that day or that night. They won't stick it out. They won't last 5 minutes with me. So let's go to the book of Job, chapter 1. What is there about this man that made him have the right stuff? What is there that is so great about this man and what God knew about this man that God would put this man in James chapter 5? Evidently, there's something to be learned here. His name's in the New Testament. As an example for me and for you and for anybody who's a Christian. Right? The first 3 verses, let's just read them. And I want you to pay particular attention to how each one of these verses is set in a priority level. You know about setting our priorities? You know, here's the most important thing. Here's the next important thing. Here's the next important thing. Watch this verse. Okay? There was a man in the land of Uz whose name was Job. All right? You know where his name is. You know where he's from. He was a perfect upright, one that feared God and eschewed or shunned evil. Priority number 1, God is the center of his life. Priority number 2, and there were born unto him 7 sons and 3 daughters. By the way, by implication, he's married too. He didn't have those by himself. Come to chapter 2, we learn about Sister Job. I don't know what her name was. I just call her Sister Job. Okay? By the way, by the end of the book, he also has children. Guess who he has those children? Sister Job. So let's not be too awful hard on Sister Job. For this reason. While she did tell him to curse God and die, okay, while she did leave him out there at the ash heap to scrape himself while his 3 friends showed up to help him. By the way, friends like this, you don't need any enemies either. Okay? She did stay married to him. And when the whole ordeal was over, she evidently learned some lessons. She learned her shortcomings too. Okay? 3rd priority. His substance also was 7,000 sheep, 3,000 camels, 500 yoke of oxen, 500 she-asses, a very great household, so that this man was the greatest of all the men of the East. Greatest of all the men of the East. That's his possessions. Oh, is your job important to you and your belongings? Fire comes and destroyed everything you've got. Anybody ever had a fire totally take out everything that you own? I've seen that. Tornado come through and take everything you got. By the way, I had an office at the church building 4 years ago and had my church library in my office. Majority of my office was at home. my dad's books. I inherited my daddy's library when he died. But the books that I used on a regular basis to study by were at the church building. I wasn't at the church building. I was at home, away from the house, away from the church building. And when I got the email or the text message that Bethel had been hit, the building had been hit, and it was completely destroyed, first thing I thought was what was in my office. And the last tornado section or storm front that came through, we got in the car, went to the church building and walked in, and the whole top shelf in my office had all kinds of things in it. My daddy's handwritten sermons were on that top shelf. And there wasn't any top shelf left in my office. There wasn't a roof in my office. I'll just give you this little tidbit. It's not scripture. I was in a gospel meeting in Manchester, Tennessee. That is 75 miles away from where I live. And a woman from Manchester came to this congregation, Red Hill Church of Christ in Manchester. She's not a Christian, and she saw my name in the newspaper advertisement. She walked up to me and she handed me a check. She says, "Are you James W. Clark Jr. of Athens, Alabama?" I said, "Yes, ma'am." She said, "I believe I have something of yours." And she handed me this canceled check that was in my tax records that was on the top shelf in my office. She said, "I picked this up in my yard, in my home, 75 miles away." Now, that's nothing. I had another woman mail me a check 125 miles away. So I got belongings from here to Pigeon Forge. Okay. I got stuff in my office. Who knows where they're scattered through there? Let me tell you something. You think your belongings are permanent? You really think what you own is permanent? You got another thing coming. Just let me tell you something. You get a wake-up call in a heartbeat on a spring day. By the way, it don't have to just get cloudy if we're looking toward the southwest at Bethel. Because we know what that cloud looks like. We know what it can do. I didn't have to preach on humility for a year at Bethel. Not at all. Didn't have any problem with pride at Bethel. We had 14 families. 2 lost everything. 14 destroyed, displaced. You think I need to preach on humility? Getting close to God? Whole church knew what that meant. Y'all remember 9/11? All our Congress people stand on the back of those Capitol steps singing, "God bless America." What's our Supreme Court justice doing right now? It's like folks don't even fear God anymore, right? How soon we forget. Why didn't Job forget? Why don't you forget? Here's his priority level. You can take all Job's possessions away from him. You know what he's going to say? "Naked came out of my mother's womb, naked shall I return thither. The Lord gives, the Lord takes away. Blessed be the name of the Lord." 14 families. 2 lost everything they had. You know what they are? They're still at Bethel. I have no doubt they're there right now. They're not sick or out of town. They're there right now. Okay? Second verse. 7 sons, 3 daughters. By the way, he's going to lose all 10 of those too. In one storm. I don't know if it's a tornado. It says a great wind collapsed the house they were in, killed them all. That'd be sort of like an F5 tornado. Take everything the building was and your family. By the way, is your family important to you? Is your family more important to you than your possessions? Sure they are. Sure they are. By the way, Job lost all 10 of his kids. Can you imagine? Oh, I know this used to be a funeral home. Can you imagine 10 coffins across the front of this room? 10 at one funeral. I went to a funeral of a friend of mine. Actually, the man who died was a friend of mine as well. A student friend of mine from Free Harbor. Brother Glenn Lee's oldest daughter, Linda, married Kim Polk. And Kim and Linda have been married a while. They had several kids, and actually 2. And they were in a van, and Kim pulled out in front of a semi-truck. And the semi-truck hit the driver's side and killed him and the 2 kids, and almost killed Linda. Linda's the only survivor of that wreck. When Linda came down that aisle, her mother was on one side and her daddy was on the other, just to help her walk down to sit to have the funeral. And there were 3 coffins lined across from that building. You know what I thought when I saw those 3 coffins? I thought of Joe. It's like, how in the world is Linda going to survive this? She was a wife and a mother, and now she's a widow without any kids. How do you survive that? By the way, Linda's doing great. Matter of fact, last I saw her, she was at Free Hardeman working for Free Hardeman University. Faithful in the church. Doing great. How do you do that? I don't know what you've been through in life. Let me tell you something. I've been through my ordeals. I'll tell you, we got back home at Bethel all kind of people going through problems. Problems with their kids, in jail, on drugs, left the church, divorced, remarried, divorced again, remarried again. Her kids, his kids, and our kids. This one's lost a job. This one just found out he's got terminal cancer. We got all kinds of problems on that. Why don't they quit God? Why don't they just quit the church? Hey, I thought, I scratch your back, you scratch mine. Is that how we operate? Come on, well, Lord, I didn't ask for this when I obeyed the gospel. I expected it to be at least some kind of blessings. Take care of me. Come on. You're a God that takes care of folks. You know what Satan said in Job 1 verse 9? The reason Job served God? The reason Job served God because of what you give him. You take away from him what you gave him, he'll curse you to your face. I want to ask you a question. God takes away from you and me what we've got. Would I give up on God? God knew Job wasn't going to do that. Now, Satan didn't know that. But God knew. Because you see, Job was made of the right stuff. Take away my house in a tornado. Take all 3 of my kids and my 2 grandkids and the one on the way. And let my wife go into deep, dark depression and turn on me and say, why don't we just all quit the church? Give up on God. And I'll say, you speak like the foolish women speak. That's what Job said in his life. Chapter 2. You get to chapter 2, Satan approaches God again. God looks at him and says, you consider my servant Job, there's none like in the earth, a perfect and upright man, one that fears God and shuns evil, and still he does retain his integrity, though thou movest me against him. In other words, I have allowed this to happen, and he still is my servant Job. And Satan says, skin for skin. All will a man give for his life. Anybody in here a POW? Former POW? You ever heard of a prisoner of war? POW? There's a senator in the state of Alabama named Jeremiah Denton. Jeremiah was a POW in the Hanoi Hilton in Vietnam. The reason Jeremiah Denton, besides the fact that he ultimately became an Alabama state senator, became famous is because he's the one that the Vietnamese put on the television. And they were asking him a question, and he was giving out information about how that Americans are baby killers. Yes, they are. That's what he said. But the whole time Jeremiah Denton was answering these pat questions like they told him to answer them as they're videotaping it, as propaganda to send back to American television, Jeremiah Denton is blinking his eyes. And there's a CIA operative who watched that. There's real bright lights they had on Jeremiah, Senator Denton. And he's blinking his eyes. And this operative said, something's not normal about that. So they called in a guy who was a decoder for codes. They had that guy sit here and look at Denton's tape here, the video. And what the decoder found out was it was Morse code. Jeremiah Denton was blinking in Morse code. Like SOS. You know, dot, 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 dash, 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 dot, dot, dot. That's SOS, by the way, Morse code. Jeremiah Denton was flashing with his eyes these words. T-O-R-T-U-R-E. T-O-R-T-U-R-E. T-O-R-T-U. That's what it's torture. While he's answering out loud with his mouth, the answers they want him to give, he's blinking with his eyes in Morse code. They're torturing us. When the operative saw that, he said, he don't mean a thing he's saying. They're making him answer that way. When he finally was released and came back, and of course they debriefed him, got all his information out, he said, you're exactly right. I was hoping somebody caught that. Because I knew you were that intelligent, that there was enough people that was going to scrutinize my looks, my appearance, says, and I knew that there was a guy who would figure that out. Torture. You ever been tortured? I've done some reading and some study on guys that were POWs and put you into major, major pain. Let me tell you, you'll confess you assassinated Abraham Lincoln when they put you through that stuff. There's several guys back home at Bethel who were in Vietnam, some in Korea. We got one guy, World War II veteran. Some in the Desert Storm, Desert Shield, Afghan, Iraq, so forth. Some of these guys talking about situations you run into. That it is possible to break it. To really get to the point to where just to get relief before you think you're about to die, you will say yes to anything they ask you. Satan struck Job from the crown of his head to the bottoms of his feet. Not just with boils. That's bad enough. They were sore boils. He couldn't stand up. He couldn't lay down. He couldn't sit down without being in pain. There's not a day in my life I don't wake up in pain. Do y'all know who Arthur is? Arthritis. Okay? Got it in my neck, got it in my back, got it who knows where else. Okay? I remember my mother talking about Arthur. I didn't know who she's talking about. Oh, Arthur came to my house. He's a permanent feature in my house now. Okay? It's not that pleasant. But what do? You ever ask somebody how they're doing and you wished you hadn't asked them? You ever ask somebody? You don't want to know that much about it. You ever ask somebody that's really, really not feeling well and they say, I'm doing just fine. Now, what's the difference? What does that person have that this person over here needs? Arthritis, right? They need arthritis. No, that person don't. They want to tell you about what's all wrong with it. The point is what? Even if I have to suffer excruciating pain, I will not give up on God. See that priority list in those first 3 verses? They're important. God was most important. His family was second. And his job and his possessions was third. And if you set your priority list that way, you're going to be all right. You're going to be all right. But you mix up that priority list, you change that and alter that anyway, and Satan says, I'll have you in a heartbeat. Because that's what makes people quit, is getting that list out of order. I think that was the last bit, right?
That's right.